Star Trek 57, M23, take 2.
Star Trek Podcast.
Captain Burnham, I demand that the prisoners be held in the brig. We will not share space with them.
Under what authority are you making these demands?
I am the sovereign magistrate
Of a colony that no longer exists. These people are now under Federation protection. And thereby subject to Federation law.
But
as are you. As long as you are on this vessel. I need to remind you that wherever you find a new home, you'll be arriving as a refugee, seeking shelter and grace. I hope you find a more just society than the one you had a hand in creating. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a ship to command.
I'm watching Star Trek. You watch Star Trek. Everybody watch Star Trek today. We watched season 4, episode 5, called The Examples. This is the It's Got Star Trek podcast.
What episode of podcast are we on?
107.
No.
Was that last week?
That was last week.
Oh, shit.
Fucking Jesse, I've had enough of
I
you.
ruined your whole bit. I've had
enough of you.
I'm gonna go now.
Episode 108
108.
of the It's Got Star Trek podcast.
Season 4, episode 5.
And I'll tell you what, I'll tell you this much. I think, if you ask me, there's a fucking spore drive in the middle of that DMA doohickey.
Oh, yeah, maybe so.
I think there's a spore drive in the middle of it.
Who would have made it?
I don't know.
Some assholes.
It could be the Discovery itself in like a future version or something. It could be who the fuck knows? It could be some other thing. The fellow from the Expanse, the asshole from the Expanse who's playing the asshole here.
He's from Ryza.
Oh, he's on The Expanse?
Yes, he's interested both in the DMA and in the spore drive. Right? Because he's working on the spore drive. That was one of Stamets' main complaints, is that he wasn't getting.
He's getting on Stamets' nerves.
He wasn't.
But so you're saying the Discovery traveled through time and did
I'm
some
not
shit?
saying that.
Why would the Discovery?
That's a possibility.
Why would the Discovery destroy planets with their shit? Unless it was an accident.
Because they can.
But okay, all right. So
You're saying the Discovery killed
I did
Book's
not
planet.
say any of that. All I said was that I am predicting that there is a spore drive in the middle of that anomaly, because if you look at the beginning, when you see the whole the opening, which I think is really cool because they have that sort of Vulcan style ship, I guess is the U.S.S. Janeway,
Yeah.
and then they have a couple
named
other...
after Captain Janeway, who's now dead in that time.
Well, you don't know that for certain.
Oh, you're
You're
right.
assuming that.
Maybe they have her head sticking around.
I can
like
use
in Futurama.
I can use the
There are
overall
holograms all over the place.
I can use the overwhelming evidence to make that assertion, but I have to remember in the back of my mind, I could be wrong. That's the secret. You always have to remember that you could be
Always.
wrong,
Just a little bit.
even if it's a small percentage.
Just a
You
teensy little bit.
don't let it dominate your life, but you just have. But it's a principle. If you think it's impossible that it could be, then why close yourself off to that possibility?
Because it could be named after Janeway's great granddaughter, who did even cooler things, maybe.
But given the evidence at hand, we
Yeah,
might as
didn't
well
get lost in the Delta
go
Quadrant.
with she's dead.
Especially if we incorporate the meta evidence. Mostly, it's a TV show,
Yeah.
and they're making references to previous characters
Yeah.
from the history of the TV show.
Yeah.
But
Anyways.
if you watch that DMA,
If you what?
at the beginning, when that DMA goes whoop, 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 and blips out of existence briefly, freaking everybody out, and then reappearing elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
What else does that? The spore drive.
That's
Well, it
true.
If you
disappeared.
look at the graphics,
It did.
if you look at the VGA graphics, it does
It
this.
was like
it does
super
this-
VGA.
It does like a swirl.
Super.
Hey, it's better than
VGA.
CGA or EGA.
You're
Am
right.
I right?
It reappeared 1,000 light years
VGA.
away, though.
Yes.
4.2 seconds later.
And the spore drive can do that. And
Does it take it 4 seconds to travel?
well, it's got to do the whole floopy-doop down and floopy-doop up. I'm
Yeah.
guessing next episode, Stamets is going to be like, you know what? It took exactly the same amount of time as the Discovery spore drive takes. And then he'll be all like,
Yeah. He'll make his face.
But anyway,
That's interesting. That never occurred to me that it could be the spore drive.
the main reason I'm thinking that was that on the second watch through, paying special attention to the VGA graphics of that
or
the action,
Super VGA.
or this SVGA graphics.
It's at least Super Nintendo.
The visual cues they use are a swirly
Visual
blip and then like a zloop blip.
But it didn't flip around like the Discovery does.
Yes, but we didn't see the thing inside the
Oh, yeah.
anomaly.
It's too far.
So we don't know. But you see glowing white star-like things spin around.
I thought it shrunk, though.
It also you could say it shrank, or you could say that the thing at the center of it traveled
And it followed.
and it disappears in the process.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Or it's a wormhole because, of course, obviously this wormhole stuff is still
don't
in play.
But we don't know who created
Even
it.
if there are no tachyons.
Space-time tunnel.
Time tunnel. We're going down time tunnel.
Space-time tunnel.
Well, I guess there's some clue at the end that like the Tarkin all grabs it at the back of his neck, and there's some kind of what looks to be an old plug on the back of his head.
I think that's supposed to be an indicator that maybe he was held prisoner by the Emerald Chain at one point.
Oh, is that what
didn't
that
they
is?
have some
Is it
prisoner
a
type?
tattoo or was it a?
No, it was a scar type
thing?
thing. Yeah. And,
So why? But what was they were talking about the spore drive, and he grabbed the back of his neck, which would sort of imply that it's related somehow.
okay. Well, I think
And he specifically said, "Well, I don't think it's the Metrons or the Iconians or the whatever,
or Q.
which hasn't been around for 600 years."
Well, maybe if he's working on a spore drive, maybe he's already been jacked into his own spore drive.
Oh, wait, you think it's a jack-in device?
Could be. Could be one of them jack-em-ins.
He's jacking in.
What happens when he's
Jacking
done
in?
jacking in? What does he do then?
He's got to jack out.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, fair play. Fair play. I thought you were going to say jack off, but it's fair
I'm not
play.
gonna say
fair play. I didn't say jack on. You did say jack in. Your response, grammatically, A-okay.
All right.
Even though it undermines the joke a little bit.
Well, you should have set the joke up
That's
better.
too bad.
Okay, I think important to pull back not the curtain,
Not pull out.
pull back the curtain, not the no.
Now, do you don't want to jack in and then pull out?
I don't want to pull back the curtain. I merely want to move backwards a little bit. If we're on a dolly, just have it, have the key grip.
If I had $1 for every time I heard you say dolly,
Dolly.
I have a dolly dollar.
Hello, Dolly.
I'm sorry. Go on.
Before we discuss the rest of the episode, I think it's important to lay the important groundwork here, which is that this character Tarkin is his name?
Yeah.
Tarka?
Tarka.
Yeah,
Not
Tarka. Yeah. Tarkin is Star Wars.
That's
Tarkin's that
Star
guy on
Wars,
the Death
buddy.
Star.
That's Star Wars. So
Star
Tarka.
Wars.
Tarka from Ryza. Little genius boy from Ryza.
Little genius boy from Ryza.
Blowing up Caracol, was it? Isn't that one
Oh, yeah.
What is a
Caracol.
caracol?
It's like a
one of those
cat kind of
cat
creature.
things.
Why did he blow up a cat?
He atomized
Oh
it.
yeah, caracol. Yeah, I know what those are. They have
Yeah,
those on Ryza.
Tufty ears
They were
things.
rising
I was just
caracol.
I didn't put it together because I was assuming it was some alien thing, but it's just some Earth thing on Ryza.
Well, so the deal
It's
with
an
this
alien
guy.
thing.
Why do they have Earth creatures on Ryza?
You know how like they have the different plants on different continents.
You can get
and
like
stuff?
KFC in Tokyo.
You get KFC.
But they didn't call it a Ryserian caracol.
No, it was just a caracol.
I know what a caracol is. I just didn't understand because I assumed it was something alien.
We're so
It didn't
used to
put
the
my
Star
mind.
Trek.
I thought it was an
content.
alien beast.
All right.
Well, he blew it up. That's fucked up.
Well, he
That's-
atomized it.
Well, yeah, but it was messy.
I bet it was.
6 of one, half a dozen of another, as they say.
It's got a lot of guts in there.
So the thing about this guy is he's manipulating the fuck out of everybody.
Yeah.
Like super manipulating.
Mm-hmm.
With Stamets, he recognizes that Stamets has a chip on his shoulder, right? And maybe he did this on purpose, treated him like this on purpose to set this up. Over the course of this episode, he gets Stamets to do what Tarka wants. Tarka gets Stamets to do what he wants, basically by feeding into his ego.
Exactly.
Slowly.
Yeah.
And not all at once. Not blowing wind up his ass or whatever the colloquialism is that I'm forgetting at the moment. Blowing smoke. Wind. He does it a little bit at a time until at the end he's like, why don't you do the honors?
Yeah.
When he wants him to be the one to turn up the
Right.
power all the way.
Right. Well, yeah. It began with when he got on the ship and he was like basically saying like a lot of great research. And then he's like a lot to improve
Yes.
on, just to like fuck with him a little
Yeah.
bit to make
Negging him, basically.
Yeah, basically make Stamets want him more. It's like rejecting Stamets, but making Stamets be like want to prove himself. And then it came to the point when he's like, smart people like you and me. That old trick when you like go up to someone and say like, we're the smart people.
We're together.
Yeah, we're
You
together.
and I.
We're the smart people. They're
We should
all
help
dumb.
each other out.
Yeah, and so totally appealing to his
Let's
ego
break the
on that.
laws of physics together.
But Stamets by the end sort of realizes after it's all done, he's like, wait a minute, that guy's kind of fucked up. Like he got caught up in the moment, but then after it was over, when he had time to calm down and think about it, he was like, this guy is kind of fucked up.
So I think the other question is whether to what degree and how long lasting being under his sway is going to be for all these characters. Because Stamets, I agree, at the end, he wasn't overtly saying, fuck that guy. That guy was totally tricking me. But he was...
he said he scares me, which is kind of like a big warning.
But he also said he scares me in the context of he reminds me of me. And so he's formed a connection.
I mean,
he's associating himself with Tarka, which I think Tarka was trying to do.
Okay, I think what I got more got. I mean, I see what. Okay, he said he scares me. He's so single-minded on his work. He cares about nothing else. And I don't think Stamets realized that he was actually kind of talking about himself too at that point. I think he was just seeing like, this guy, all he cares about is himself, his work, and he scares me, blah, blah, blah. And then Culber looks, is like, huh, really? And then that's when Stamets realized, okay, I guess I'm like that too.
Yeah.
So you could say that Stamets didn't realize that he was like that. And maybe when Stamets sees Tarka acting like this, Stamets will learn from it, be like, oh, I was being like that. I can't be like that. So...
Well, and then the other person he manipulates, there's a couple others, but Saru, it's a brief thing, but he gets this crazy reaction out of Saru, which was comically hilarious, like,
Yeah, it's like an angry seal or something.
And that was pretty frightening.
And he did that after mocking Saru's feet and sort of being obnoxious to him.
He was trying to rattle him because Saru is like, he's the sensible and wise person in a lot of ways, but he's sort of taking the role of in the middle kind of person, and he's trying to frame his sensibilities as like a weakness.
Galileo.
Yeah.
Galileo, right? So he's just basically trying to rattle Saru to get him to his side, to get him to let go a little bit and to sort of put him off guard. He's a very emotional character in that sense. So the stuff he was doing about making the model and all that stuff, and about like when he was like, who's doing this? It's like, I have no idea. And like, that was actually very like, a scientific attitude of like, I don't know everything. I don't know why this is happening. Let's figure it out. And so that was cool. But at the same time, the methods he went to was sort of emotional and selfish and stuff. And so he was trying to get Stamets to be on his side using emotion. He was trying to sort of rattle Saru through emotion. And then because Jet Reno wasn't sort of like playing that game,
He couldn't control her.
He couldn't control her, so he projected the emotion of grumpiness on her. He's like, oh, she's not going with me, so she must have a grumpy emotion. No, she was just trying to be like completely, neutral on the issue, and he took that to mean like, I can't appeal to her emotion, therefore I'll assign an emotion to her.
To be fair to him, Jet Reno is grumpy. On the other hand, I 100% agree that his reaction was because he wasn't able to manipulate her. Either he wasn't able to figure it out, or he was smart enough to know he couldn't to begin with, so he didn't engage with her too much.
I don't know.
Sort of ignored her.
I mean, she's just really dry. I don't know. I mean, I can see grumpiness maybe, but I don't see her walking around going harumph. She's just really like...
I agree. I forget
what that word is.
Good point.
Maybe is cynical? It's almost cynical, not
Synesthesia?
quite.
Synesthesia?
Synesthete.
When you taste purple?
Yeah, that's what it is. When you taste purple and you see...
But...
You can smell yellow.
Yeah,
who
right.
I think we need to worry about most in terms of being manipulated by this fellow is Book.
Yes,
Book at the end was, I think, the most easy to get under his sway, because Book is already upset because he's sort of traded places in some ways with Burnham this season, where he's developed this hero complex, wanting to save people from this DMA because he thinks that's like the only thing that can justify him being alive, I suppose. It mirrors Culber's conversation, which we'll touch on in a bit in a second. But and we've seen them developing somewhat of a simpatico relationship, and it makes sense now because we see they're both dealing with a similar issue of like just having to do everything in their power to save people. Different perspectives, but the same basic idea. And Tarka comes in and is straight up like feeding right into what what Book needs at that moment to be
Right.
convinced. It's so clear, and it makes me nervous to know what the next thing is going to be, because Book is not a guy who is afraid of ignoring Starfleet, whatever, just not, that hasn't been his life. So he's perfectly comfortable going off and doing whatever. Right.
Yeah, it seems like he's trying to get Book is kind of getting in the precipice of getting lost in his own grief, basically, and yeah, it seems like Tarka is going to take him to the edge of his own morality, and then it seems like Book will probably reject it eventually at some point. But the question is, will Tarka realize it? It seems like Tarka will get lost in his whole emotional game, but maybe Tarka will come to a realization at some point too. Who knows?
And the important thing here is the context of who he is applying his manipulations to. It's not just who it works on and who it doesn't. It's specifically Saru, of course. It makes sense because he needs his permission in order to move the work forward, right? Okay, that's obvious. But where he puts the big guns towards are Stamets and Book, the two people who can fly a spore drive, navigate, strictly speaking. They can navigate a spore drive. Right? He's been doing research on a spore drive. He hasn't been able to solve the quote unquote navigator problem. He's using psychological manipulation tactics on the two remaining people in the universe that can use a spore drive.
That's a good point.
And I think the DMA has a spore drive.
Whenever I hear DMA,
Somebody's got to get jacked in.
Whenever I hear DMA, I think of PMA, which is
what is that?
Positive mental attitude.
From Bad Brains?
Yeah, that Bad Brains song.
Oh, I thought that was sort of like a psychological technique or something.
Well, I guess you could say
It might
is.
be.
It might be. Positive. You got that PMA.
Don't be depressed. Just have a positive mental attitude. That'll solve all your problems if you're just more positive. You should just smile more, goddammit.
By the way, God, I hate that. Smile.
Just smile.
You look so much better with a smile.
Yeah, why don't you
Fuck
smile?
you.
Nobody
Wouldn't that be
does.
great?
It's a lie.
You'll be happier if you smile.
It's like when I was busy, or when I used to wait tables, I'd get super fucking weeded, and then the manager would walk by.
Weeded?
Weeded, like as in like
in the weeds.
in the weeds, yeah.
That's cool.
And so that's
Cool.
cool.
It's a cool verb.
Yeah, it's
It's
common.
waiter talk.
Waiter talk.
Past tense adverb.
Server, yeah, I guess I should say server. But when the manager would look at me when I'm super fucking busy and have about 20 things in my queue, he's like, "Smile," and I'm like, I just want to fucking punch him so much. It's like, fuck you,
I'll
asshole.
smile after I stick my foot up your ass.
And I developed it. This is a real side note. Sorry. Tangent. Side note. I developed this technique for not looking like a crazy person, because when I get really busy, my eyes open really wide and I start to look like an insane person.
Note to the audience:
Yes.
This is a technique Dan has obviously abandoned.
Yeah, because I'll tell you why.
get
Because I
that.
would try to I was like, okay, well, what's the opposite of opening your eyes wide? It's squinting, and so I
you
would just
can't
look like
see
this
nothing.
weirdo stoned person or something, stoned at best.
Like, do you need new glasses?
Yeah, I at best I would look stoned. At worst, I would look like there's something wrong with me. So it's like,
Yeah.
how do I I couldn't prevent my eyes from opening really wide, and so I tried to squint, and that wouldn't work. So I was just like, I can't make my face any different than it is. I've tried so hard. At what point do you give up? Like, at what point do you embrace your faults, and at what point do you change them? You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes
It's a constant negotiation, my friend.
yeah, because sometimes you look at something in life and you're like, this is challenging. I can't do it, but I need to overcome this challenge because that's who I was truly meant to be. Or do you say, maybe I wasn't meant for this thing, and you move on
Maybe
to
I was just
something else?
meant to look like a bug-eyed crazy
Yeah,
person.
right. And somehow work that into my fucking, charm. I don't know. Anyways.
It works for Saru.
You
but-
just start yelling at customers.
Yeah.
Like, listen.
I've done that a couple times. One thing, this was also kind of a tangent, is that when Tarka says to Book, science has many purposes. I mean, Book does go try again, which is like, that was a bullshit answer, but that's a bullshit answer anyways, regardless of not only is it a deflection, but it's just a bullshit answer, because science doesn't really have a purpose. Science is a methodology.
Yes, exactly.
And if it were to have a purpose, if you were to have to prescribe a purpose to science, it would just be the sort of concept of finding the truth, basically.
or
Explaining
even
things.
more in a more nuanced
explaining
way.
things. Yeah, truth is a little bit too floofity doo, but explaining
philosophy.
If you
Yeah.
want to get super semantic about it, you can be like, science is about demonstrating what isn't true.
Oh, that's true.
Because that's a lot of what it comes down to is we can prove all these things aren't true, and so the remaining ideas seem as good as any because we can't say they're not true yet. Sometimes it's the opposite, but yeah, I think that's going to be important. I think this is all going to play into what's going going on forward. And who knows, by next week, all of our predictions will be either proven correct and insightful, or
They will.
we and everyone else will have forgotten about them as they present new information that takes it in a different direction.
So I'm surprised that that it didn't occur to me that it could be a spore drive. So without having thought of that idea, and that makes a lot of sense actually, I was thinking when he grabbed his neck, because that definitely has to have something to do with it, because the timing.
Yeah,
I mean, it seems likely.
We need clarity whether that's that, because one idea that I've had and other people have mentioned is that maybe that's related to one of those, the standard old prison, Orion neck clamp punishment zapper things that they can remote control zap you with.
For a brief second, I was like, is that like a Borg thing? And then I was thinking, well, if it was a Borg thing, he'd probably have a bunch of other fucked up
Is it
shit.
the neural link thing where
Yeah.
they jack in and steal your brain waves or something?
And like the Borg's MO wouldn't be to manipulate a big fucking like space anomaly. That's not really how they do things.
Presumably.
But I was wondering, it's like, are they, and before that scene happened, I was like, is this going to be a lead into the Klingons eventually? It's like, no, it's not.
No.
It's definitely not.
Klingons
Yeah, for
are
a minute
still-
there, I was
I was
like,
like-
wait a minute. No,
Yeah, and then for a minute I was
MIA.
Klingons, for a minute I was Borg, and then I think the Spore Drive, I think the Orion Syndicate, that makes most sense actually.
Again, we'll see where it goes. The Spore Drive right now seems to make sense for just with the basic information they've presented, as well as who they've declared they don't think are involved. And so they have the litany of previous Star Trek characters / species / beings that could have conceivably done this. The Iconians with their gateways, because they can traverse potentially even multiple galaxies as
So-
far as we know.
Right.
The Q, obviously.
The funny thing is they bring up all these species, the Metrons, Iconians, Q Continuum. It's almost as if somebody else owns the property to Klingons, because, like another company owns the property to Klingons.
know.
Like they
Because
sold Klingons to Pepsi.
yeah, exactly. Because they're mentioning all these species, but for some reason we're not allowed to think about the Klingons. And why?
Of course, the Klingons wouldn't. I think that in this case, it's not so. The omission
Yeah.
is not as
Yeah.
apparent because Klingons wouldn't have this power.
Yeah.
anymore. They were naming races that have been demonstrated to do godlike things. In other words, unpredictable physics breaking things.
And maybe the Klingons in the future are just like off doing their own thing, but you'd at least think a Discovery at some point would be like, hey, whatever happened to those Klingons? And they'd be like, oh, they're gone off somewhere else doing something else.
I think they're, because we've discussed this whole
Yeah.
absent Klingon mystery a lot now. And I do recall, could be wrong, I recall seeing some screen grab sometime during the third season where, they're early on, they're showing the maps of what the current situation is.
Oh, is there like a
current
Klingon territory?
And I think there was an area that was called like the Klingon Zone or Klingon Territory. They had other famous landmarks like Earth and other stuff listed out.
Wind, fire?
Yeah, they had all of those things. They didn't have water.
No, just earth, wind, and fire.
Yeah,
It's weird.
it is weird.
Do they have wood?
Would you do that?
I would.
So we'll
Yes.
You have wood.
Yes, I would.
the whole deal with Targa and what's going on. He seems shady.
Targa.
I don't know if he's shady just because that actor frequently plays shady characters. He's acting shady.
He's
He's
from
acting like
Ryza.
an asshole. He's manipulating
Ryzens are
people.
shady.
He's up to something. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it some sort of time paradox
I wanna
where the experiment they're doing somehow goes back in time and causes the DMA? I don't know.
You got that DMA.
Maybe not. Is it? I also think.
I mean,
we
he's
shouldn't-
a real scientific. He's like a real scientist buckaroo type.
The thing is
Buckaroo, yes.
He's a buckaroo.
that the
Buccaneer.
way
Yeah.
the way they're playing it is right kind of down that line where if he was even more overtly prickish and sinister and evil, you'd say, oh, they're leading us astray. It's a trick. He's not actually, it
Yeah,
turns out he's
right.
not the evil one.
Right.
If he were a little bit more on the nicer side, you would start to think, oh, I don't know, there's something shady about this dude. Maybe he's the evil guy. But they're right down the middle. It could really kind of go either way. I like that he's sticking around and that this is a new character to sort of agitate and aggravate people and
Yeah.
cause a ruckus.
Originally, so when Stamets was hesitant about having this guy around originally, when the Admiral Vance, what's his name?
Admiral Charles Vance.
Charles Vance. At first, it seemed like Stamets was just because Stamets has some insecurities, right? Like I thought originally, I just thought in general he didn't want to have anyone helping him. He was kind of saying
Yeah.
like, I can handle this all
Yeah.
on my own.
He wants the credit. I mean, he
But-
did do all the work on that stuff.
Yeah, right. But it turns out it's more specific than that. It's that he specifically has a problem with Tarka. he was like, oh, Tarka built on my work. He never contacted me. Oh, he specifically avoided me. He doesn't talk to me at all. And so it went from I'm wondering if someone else came to help him, if he would feel as insecure about it. Whereas Tarka, I think he just specifically didn't like Tarka. Like I said, they played it to seem like he's insecure about everyone, but it seemed like specifically Tarka that is revealed later that he was fucked up. And it's funny because it's insecure because as soon as Tarka compliments him, suddenly Stamets is on board.
Yes. To me, it seems clear that Stamets has an ego issue. He has had that going back a long way. He doesn't want people interfering with his stuff. He was willing to talk. He was willing to talk back to Lorca, who everyone else was terrified of, and all that shit. So he wants to be in charge, and if he's in charge, then he feels happy. If he's placated or people revere him, he's cool with that. He's cool with having Tilly around or whatever. Remember, he didn't get along with Jet Reno at first either,
right?
Because she didn't care. She was like, I'm clever too, motherfucker.
Yeah.
And he had to build that relationship with her and build a mutual respect with her and go through some shit together, right? So this guy, Targa, everyone's just calling him this massive genius dude who's doing all this genius stuff, and the Federation is giving him all the projects to do, all the cool stuff. And Stamets isn't doing that stuff. They didn't put Stamets. And now, by the way, guess what? It makes sense that Stamets wouldn't be in charge because Stamets is from fucking 900 years in the past. I don't care how brilliant he is. He's not going to be 100% up to speed on all the current nitty gritty stuff.
Right. It's like if you were you have somebody's ancient knowledge and you're looking at that stuff and you're building on it. You don't go to that person having a conversation because they're dead.
Yeah.
As far as Tarka's concerned, like this guy's from the past, and Tarka's in Tarka's time, and he's doing what is now.
Right. And which also includes like new technologies to work with and stuff. Where there's no way Stamets could understand how to,
because they got all kinds of wacky stuff. Man.
They got tons of wacky stuff.
Man, they got so much wacky stuff, programmable matter and shit.
You don't even know. Man.
I want to know what Tarka was flipping around when he was all. Remember, he was like spinning. It looked like keys, like a keychain, but it wasn't. Or like one of those giant things that open beer bottles with, like a beer bottle.
Maybe it was just loose mashed potatoes.
He replicated the mashed potatoes, and it was cool because he was like cold, and it's like, well, wait a minute, cold is like, well, he's gonna stick his fingers.
Yeah, which was like,
it's because he's a fucking genius.
He thought ahead.
I thought ahead.
Twice now, Stamets has done to the whole jump to conclusions.
All I need is one P.
Jump to the conclusions thing. When like the Vulcan, like a couple episodes ago, was it 2 episodes ago when he was at the Vulcan Science Council or whatever, up 3,000 miles above the planet in super weird cube where there was no wind, but that was awesome somehow. It was awesome, by the way.
It was.
When the Vulcans when the Vulcans at one point they closed their eyes to meditate on the hypothesis that Stamets presented about the primordial worm, and he was like, now's not an appropriate time for sleeping. It's like, come on, man, read the room, I
know.
But he did that again when Tarka ordered mashed potatoes. He's like, we're on the clock here, so if you need to eat something. It's like, obviously he wasn't fucking eating something.
He would have gotten more peas if he
would have gotten more peas, and he wouldn't have ordered cold mashed potatoes. No, I only like cold mashed potatoes with 1 pea. That's what I eat.
I'm a mad genius.
Yeah, he's just did he really think he's just being impatient, and he's not reading he's too self-involved. He's too self-involved to read the room and figure out what's really going on because he's too stuck in his own head or some shit.
It's true.
He's obsessed with his own work.
He's played to jump to conclusions, Matt.
Obsessed.
It's a Matt where you jump to conclusions.
Yeah, he had that.
He needs a jump to conclusions.
He's got that back in his quarters.
Yeah, his quarters.
Dr. Hugh had to put it away.
He had to roll it up.
I hang out in my semis.
What?
Not my quarters, my semis.
With your semi.
I thought you were going to say like
a
dime. Like a dime, because a quarter is a coin.
Right.
Not in every country.
I was thinking of like quarterfinal, semifinal.
Most countries just have 20 cents. They don't have 25 cents.
Canada, they have loonies.
They got quarters.
And they got toonies.
Loonies and toonies.
Toonies is $2. Loonies,
they got Beezus for Foonies.
They do have Beezus for Foonies.
And it's funny about like all the stereotypes about Canada and hockey. On their dollar, on their paper money, they have little like kids playing hockey on a frozen lake scene.
I don't think I've ever seen Canadian paper money.
Yeah, it's on the currency, like some kids playing hockey. So it's kind of funny that
it's their sport.
Yeah, they love it. They love it. All those Canadians love hockey. No, actually, my stepdad does not like hockey, but he's like
you should clarify that he's Canadian.
Yeah.
He's
Oh
Canadian.
yeah, that's right. He's a Quebecois.
Quebecois, Canadian.
Anyways, you learned a little something about me. Now you can dox me. So have fun with that.
Don't dox Dan.
Fucking assholes. You're all assholes anyway. Just kidding. Only the people who don't dox me are not assholes.
All right.
It's up to you if you're an asshole or not. Do you want to dox me? You're an asshole. If you don't, you're not an asshole. It's up to you.
I could read out your address, but
I'm going to make
actually.
I'm going to summarily judge your entire person on my own accord.
You're a doxer.
And if I judge you poorly, it's your own fault. You ever know those scenes where like the villain's all like, "This was your own fault.
That's called a teacher.
It's your own fault. The reason
Or a parent.
Why are you hitting yourself?
the reason I'm bombing the Earth is because of the decisions you made. This is your fault. This is your choice. You chose not to tell me the secret to where your father's hiding out so I could kill him. You didn't tell me, so I'm going to bomb the Earth. That's your fault." It's like, oh no, it's not your fault for fucking bombing the Earth. You know what I'm talking about when shows do
I know
that?
what
You
you're
know what
talking
movies
about.
do? Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Trying to displace blame.
I've seen TV.
Yeah, me too.
Well,
Talking about
Well,
talking
Tarka,
about
I don't know.
Star
Tarka.
Trek.
Is there
Tarka and the Stamets talking about Star Trek.
we probably covered all the Tarka stuff and move on to
Yeah.
those.
Where
But
did
why
that
don't-
song come from, anyway?
Which
know.
song?
It's like some song, and they're singing about baseball players or
Yeah.
something.
What are you talking about?
It was on The Simpsons too. They
It
had
was on The Simpsons.
they had like talking about softball.
They had like special lyrics for that Simpsons episode.
Yeah, but
All right.
originally it's different.
I don't
song.
know what it's called.
Let's take a quick break, and then
Yeah,
we'll
it's
come
definitely
back,
break time.
and we'll shift from Simpsons talk
Yeah,
back into
we'll,
Star
we'll go
Trek
back
talk.
to Star Trek.
All right, we'll be
Come
right
back.
back. All right, we're back.
Where did we go?
We went on break.
What did you do during your break, Jesse?
I invested in Bitcoin and Ethereum.
I looked
Ethereum.
over there.
Looked over there, Patrick. You invested in Bitcoin and urethra. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I put Bitcoin in my urethra.
Put it right
Whoa.
up my urethra.
I heard that's the cool thing
That's
to do today.
really conceptual.
Yeah. It's sort of
That's how you
hedging your bets.
that's how you
in,
make money.
Cryptocurrency.
Hedging
Yeah.
your bets.
All right. So we talked about Tarka. We talked about Stamets to some degree or another. I think we covered most of the Stamets stuff, probably. He did have that really great scene with Hugh in the end. And what I really liked about the scene between Hugh and Stamets was they were both helping each other. I like it when it's not one partner helping the other. That's fine. Sometimes that makes sense for the story, but this was where they were talking to each other, and in talking to each other, they were both helping each other. It's like this is a very healthy relationship.
Yeah.
They have like the best relationship on the ship or something.
Yeah, like near the beginning of the episode when Culber is going off to help people, and Stamets is like, "You need to rest" or whatever at the beginning. That could have gone either way because
Culber wasn't communicating at that time.
no,
He walked out,
right,
basically.
and because Stamets has historically been always the one that's kind of sort of
Freaking out,
need to chill his toot a little bit.
Yeah.
And Culber's always the sensible kind of
He's
one.
got a toot.
It's easy. At first I was thinking, is Stamets, were they trying to play this off as Stamets is kind of nagging at Culber to like spend more time with him? Because that happens too in stories where it's like someone's like, "You spend so much time with other people, you need to spend more time with me," which is a reasonable thing. It's like,
but they didn't
what
go that
about
way.
what about your own family? But yeah, they didn't go that way. Stamets wasn't doing it for any purposes, selfish purposes. He was straight up like, "You need to sleep," and and Culber presented like he usually does, which is very sensible. It's like, people need help, and I need to help them, and it makes sense. But at this point, you could tell he was breaking a little bit.
And
so it was
Stamets even
cool.
says, "Well, can you take some of my advice?" And Culber's just like, "Later, I'll see you fucking
right.
later."
Yeah, right.
But then to transfer over to Culber, we've been seeing this interesting arc with Culber where in the first few episodes, all the episodes he's been helping people, but in the first few episodes, they're just sort of showing Culber helping people and being really great at it. And then you start to see little cracks. I think one of the first ones maybe was when we see Culber, was it last episode, I believe, when Culber and Book are talking, right? And Book sort of turns some of those questions back on Culber, and Culber's like, "Oh, I don't know, my life's a little fucked up, but don't worry about it."
He revealed personal information, which is something I guess you're not supposed to do when you're a therapist.
And so Culber here now, like you said, Dan, now we start seeing more cracks in that foundation where he's still offering people good advice, but clearly something's not going well with him, which we then is revealed with when he talks to David Cronenberg.
Okay, well, back to your point a second ago about him cracking and stuff. there was the time when Tilly was talking to Saru, and Saru was like, he says, what do you hope to gain from novelty or whatever?
Yes.
Now, I don't know if the writers necessarily intended this to be true. I took the suggestion of changing your daily patterns as kind of like a superficial sort of advice.
Yeah, you mentioned that on that.
Yeah,
when
I
we
mentioned
discussed
that on
episode.
that episode, and I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know. Like, I could just be inventing bullshit, and I'm wrong.
Towards the end of that conversation on that particular episode of the podcast, you shifted your view somewhat to say that you could at least see how it could be potentially helpful in the context of Tilly.
Right, but I was I did, but I was also wondering if maybe it's like Culber is giving this, and I think I'm reading too much into this, honestly, but I'm wondering if Culber was maybe suggesting she changes her daily patterns, and it was superficial advice because he's a doctor, not a therapist.
Well, he's trained to be. I think our understanding is that he is trained to be a counselor. That role has.
But it's probably like
elevated-
doctor school is like he took a few counseling. He probably took a few counseling classes.
He took a few electives in counseling.
Yeah, I don't think he's
You
Deanna
don't-
Troy counseling. You know.
I don't know. I think he's I'm going to assume he's qualified. I'm going to assume further that it wasn't that the writers didn't think of this role for him previously, but it was that they've gone through so much tragedy, and by moving to the future, the need for a ship's counselor on a skeleton crew became more acute, and so he sort of fell into that role.
Right, and
because they
that's-
still have that other
well,
doctor.
right,
We just don't see Dr. Pollard. We just don't see her very often.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is that he's kind of fell into that role, and I'm not saying he wasn't good at it, but it seems like he's trying to figure out his way around focusing more on being a counselor, and that sort of shows by now in this episode when it all comes to a head where he's like, now. Honestly, I think I might be reading a little too much into that first part about a few episodes back.
I think I would say I think you may be, just based on the fact that he seems to be competent at what he's doing, insofar as people seem to make progress when they do talk to him. Their lives do improve. The problem is, which is basically what David Cronenberg says, is that he's got his own issues that are unaddressed, and that no matter how good he is at helping people right now, if he doesn't address those issues, then he is not going to, there's going to be a point in time where he will no longer be a help to those people, and potentially even become a disadvantage to them, because you could imagine him getting all bitter.
And we haven't even seen it on the show really from his viewpoint. What he went through, you see it through Stamets, but
That's right.
There's a little bit, but the whole like last season, nobody really talks about the fact that he was dead and he came back.
Yeah, and I thought
They had all these other wacky adventures that sort of outweighed that.
And I thought that was a pretty poignant point that Kovich brought up about the threat of what the threat of death, how it can make one scramble for meaning.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to say that there's no point to life in the universe, and it's all when you haven't faced a real possibility of death. It's easy to look at that logically and say, this is this. When you sort of face the possibility of death, it's kind of like your mind goes into some kind of self-preservation overdrive to try to convince itself that there is a point, because it's common for people who are facing death, they start going to church, or they get into weird,
Or stop going to church.
or stop going to church, or they do weird,
They reevaluate their perspective.
yeah, they do weird alternative medicine or stuff like that, whether alternative to what you're used to doing, like you said. And so you have to convince yourself that there is a point, and you have to start working on it and finding it quick, because you're like, oh shit, I'm on a clock.
Well, I think because probably the default assumption, the reason why there is a quest to find meaning is because that experience results in a default presumption that there is no meaning, and that's scary, right?
Right.
And so maybe some people can handle that. Other people have to grow to handle that. Other people yet reach out for meaning. It is a version of survivor bias, which is what we're seeing with Book, right? That's a thing you hear about, you read about, which is people who survive, military engagements, car accidents, natural disasters, etc. People who survive something that people close to them do not, often have this experience of like, why am I the one who survived? Why did I deserve to survive more than this other person? Is there a reason for me being alive? And with Culber, it's the sci-fi Star Trek twist on that, which is, it's not that he was in a bad car accident. It's that he fucking died and came back and then went to the future and all this other shit he's had to deal with nonstop. And he's been given this outlet in that his role permits him to have a purpose for the people around him. And now that's starting to fray because it was a Band-Aid. It was a mental Band-Aid for a while to say like, well, here's why I've got no choice. I've got to help these people get through their terrible days. And he's using up the whatever store of mental energy he has. And I think that's what David Cronenberg's getting at, right? He's getting at, dude, this shit, you can't keep this up forever. And it kind of looks like shit's starting to fall apart right now.
Yeah. Even if you believe there's nothing after death, it doesn't mean you won't be desperate to find meaning, which is strange because if there's
maybe more so.
Because if there's nothing after death, how can there be meaning to anything, right? That kind of question. The threat of death can create sort of logical dissonance that can be difficult to reconcile.
Are you threatening me?
Yes, I'm threatening you. You're Cornholio.
I am Cornholio.
And so that's why, like I was talking about sort of putting your mind into overdrive like Colbert did, was trying to like be like, there's a purpose that I died. I could be gone soon. Suddenly I can't put off the idea of like making a difference anymore. Not that he ever did, but now it's like I have to do it into overdrive because, right, survivor bias, there must be a meaning behind why I'm here. So it's my responsibility to like, make sure that I like,
because you're not supposed to come back.
Fulfill
if you die,
my destiny.
You're not supposed to come back. Everybody else died.
Yeah. And so how do you do that if you're a person how do you do that if you're a person that believes life is sort of a series of meaningless and incidental events?
Life is a series of compromises.
Yeah, from King of the Hill. If you believe that life is a series of sort of meaningless and incidental events, and then you die and come back, you can still believe that, but at the same time, part of your brain, your emotional side of your brain, creates a dissonance, saying like, well, I logically believe that, but at the same time, something about my body is telling me that I need to do something differently because of some kind of weird survival instinct.
The thing though is the solution is, I mean, to my mind, pretty obvious. In the context of Star Trek, in the context of everything we've learned about
you're about to make
characters, whatever would make you think that.
Why would you think that, Dan?
Whatever about the cadence of my speech would make you think that. No, I mean, quite seriously, you're dealing with all this mental health stuff. All he needs to do is he needs to just, I'm sure they have it on Discovery. He's got to go down to Cetacean Ops and find his porpoise. Porpoise.
Yeah.
He's got to find his porpoise.
Find his porpoise.
Find his porpoise.
Find his porpoise.
I think you're about to tell a joke. I think you're about to tell a joke. I said something slightly different. Something slightly different than the way you were talking.
I mean, we were talking about death and like finding meaning, which is a pretty heavy topic. So it only makes sense for you to sort of try to find some levity out of that situation.
Did you say levity as a way to joke because you said it's a heavy topic, like levitation?
He's doing it again. He's doing it again.
No, you said the joke this time. I merely observed.
You're making it funny.
I think death makes Patrick uncomfortable.
No, I love death. I love death.
See, he's doing it again.
This guy's always wallowing in it.
Kill all the motherfuckers.
He doesn't want to talk about death, so he jokes to guard himself against the idea of death.
We've been talking about death for a long time. I thought there's a limited amount of podcast real estate.
I want to talk about death the whole time.
It's like every podcast we talk about death. No.
And then Colbert died, and he got sad about it. It's all. I really like it. It's really well done. I think the writing is overall good in these parts. This episode I thought was tightly written. The plotting was interesting. Again, like the pattern they've developed is to have the DMA as sort of a part of the story, but it's also it's also not like, yes, they want to solve this mystery of the DMA. They're learning more about it, but really you're learning about the characters. You're learning about this new Targa guy. He's scheming in some way, we don't know, good or bad yet, how he's affecting Stamets, and
there's a little side adventure.
Yeah, and there's the side adventure with the Book and Burnham.
Right. Of course, those are the two that are going to do some crazy shit where you're like, we're going to rescue these prisoners off at the pole.
And another very Star Trek style thing to do. They're on the Kali asteroid colony that look badass because we always see the same blue or yellow planet now in Discovery.
Sometimes green or purple.
And it's all chained together with tubes.
Yeah, I really, for some reason, I liked the cut when they were introducing the idea of the model. Like Tarka was introducing the idea of like, let's make a model, and then it's cut right to them like shooting at those bug things. Something about that felt really fun,
and it wasn't a Star Wars wipe like that fucking weird Star Wars wipe in the last episode.
Yeah, but that I thought that part of the episode was kind of fun. I was talking before about sometimes I felt Discovery was like a little too heavy and maybe not enough fun, and maybe I'm just simply looking at it from the lens of what was from before, because it is. I mean, admittedly,
From the before time.
the Discovery is a bit heavier, but that could just be the different sensibilities in production. Like the music,
Sure.
they choose.
It's a more melodramatic
like
style.
the shots they take. But I mean, basically, the ideas they approached in this episode were the same kind of ideas they would approach in a Star Trek show. It's almost like
it's very TNG. This whole prison rescue thing with the asshole administrator.
Yeah.
All of this is something.
that guy sucked.
You would
Yeah,
see
he
a
was
version
an
of this
asshole.
story on TNG.
Right.
It would only have like one beetle and it would look like a remote control car.
That's the other thing is they have higher production values. So whereas they would normally probably just show like some invisible enemy shooting from behind a corner, they actually showed them shooting like all these beetles, and stuff like that. And so it was.
Beetle.
I really got a vibe of like that TNG vibe, but it's interesting how you present and direct those ideas can give a different vibe to the same sort of idea.
I like this
which is
plot
interesting.
line. I did not like the banter. I thought the only thing poorly written-
That was weird banter. I didn't know why they were
banter
reminiscing.
Even the content was fine.
It was fine. I just didn't.
The idea of a reminiscing, but the banter didn't work. It was the only part of the episode I thought was poorly written and out of character, like Book saying, like, you've got to be kidding me, or whatever, like those
It
things.
seemed like it came out of nowhere. It was
Yeah,
just like,
I wasn't sure what the point of it
It
was.
seemed
Other
like
than
a sitcom style, like, oh, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Or what now?
you got to be kidding me.
Most of that, man, some of it worked. I'm not complaining about it. It was just that it threw me off a little, especially a lot of.
It's much more fun now that we're fucking.
Yeah,
That's what they said at one point.
That's
didn't
what
they
they said.
yeah, they did say that verbatim.
Yeah, I didn't see the banter.
And it's probably true.
Like maybe the banter was just to fill time. Maybe I feel like it was just to remind you that stuff happened or something. To be like,
he's
look at
all
where
like,
we
oh, I
look.
had faith in you. Oh, I knew you'd do it and stuff.
It was telling the, but I thought maybe it was like telling the viewer, it's like, this is where they were then. Look at where they are now or something. But I don't know. It felt a little weird. I wasn't terrible, but I didn't really.
I'm pretty sure with, especially with Book getting influenced by Targa, that as well as some of the other Tarka that's going on here.
He's not a Klingon dog thing.
Toby Targ.
I think they are setting us up for a conflict between Book and Burnham.
Yes.
We see more of that in this episode where there's a more overt disagreement, but there's been a few in terms of what their strategy is. Right from the very first episode, more lighthearted early on, but there's increasing disagreement in terms of right thing to do.
Book is going to become Raphael and Burnham's going to be Leonardo in the TMNT movie.
And Jet Reno is Donatello.
I liked when Jet Reno got introduced all casually, like she'd never left.
Yeah.
I was like, right
She's just
on.
in the back somewhere.
Yeah, right. It's like awesome.
She was always buttering around in the back.
I'm really great that she.
Yeah, and they brought up Tilly briefly just to remind. I don't know if that was a reminder that it's like, she's gone, or
and we haven't forgotten her.
Yeah, we haven't forgotten
It's
her.
not a Tasha Yar situation.
Yeah.
This episode didn't have Detmer or Wasakan. Another episode.
There's a couple episodes in a row. Yeah.
It's interesting when they got rid of Tilly. That's when they brought back Jet Reno and they introduced this Tarka character. So there's probably, I wonder if that has.
This was a
COVID limitations.
Science focus episode, not a bridge focus episode.
Well, the Tilly. It seems like Tilly's not going to be in the show for a while. Do you think? It seems, and it made sense. It made more sense with the Saru thing because that was a season cliffhanger kind of deal. Not a cliffhanger, but it was a season ender.
Season.
So
this is a mid-season.
This is like mid. So it's like
not even.
Yeah, it's not even. So it seems like something either came up suddenly or because the only other time mid-season this happened was with Giorgio, and it's kind of confusing what's going to happen with Tilly.
I don't know.
I think she's going to get her own show.
I know. That's what you were saying last week. We don't know. It's possible, actually.
It's just strange
it's totally
because the
possible.
only other explanation I could think is that for some reason she had an emergency and had to duck out of the show for a while.
Who knows? Maybe she was having a baby or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
We wouldn't know these things necessarily. But whatever the out of universe reason is, it's just a reminder, right? That she's still floating around out there, but.
In space, you float.
Space.
They were on the planet thing. So there were two
on the planet thing.
I thought this was a really good episode. I really enjoyed a lot of it. There was two other things. Like the dialogue thing was kind of like, it's not a big deal. it's kind of weird. I don't know the point, but whatever. Two things. The main thing is like the main thing that I know was done for dramatic purposes, but it's like, why couldn't they have waited until the evacuations were complete, which was going to be 4 hours to start creating the model? You know what I mean? Because they
yeah.
couldn't use the transport power
because
because they were using it. And it's like, well, and they have it both. They try to have it both ways. They say we only have 4 hours to remove these people. Oh no, only 4 hours. And then suddenly 4 hours.
All of a sudden, it was 3.5 hours.
Somehow, so 4 hours wasn't enough time to do what they needed to do. That was the emergency. But now 4 hours is too long to wait to do this model situation. They could have waited till after that was over.
I agree.
The other one that I'm sort of conflicted on is the sort of what happened to Felix.
Right.
I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure what the message they were trying to send by letting him die. And Book, to the credit, Book was right. Like Book was like, "This is wrong," and it was wrong. And
I don't necessarily think it was wrong. I think it's difficult to answer. There are some questions where, yes, of course, if you're from one perspective, you'll say this is 100% right, and there's another perspective is 100% wrong. I think for a lot of people, it's in the middle, which is probably where Burnham is. Where on the one hand, yes, she wants to save his life.
But
on the other hand, she doesn't want to take his agency away.
Right, and that's totally a fair point to make. But in terms of the message the show is presenting,
it's like, is the murderer cool?
Is it saying it's okay to commit suicide? You know what I mean? Because he says it's because of penance.
Yeah,
but one could also
feels he deserves the punishment.
But one could also say, like, stop being such a sad Sally, or a sad
smile more,
sad Sam,
smile more,
sad
just be more
Sam.
positive.
He's taken like some kind of Russian novel approach to it. It's like, I'm going to accept my punishment.
Yeah.
And I have to do it this way, or else like.
And so many stories, though, that I guess maybe is more of a Western thing, I guess, is to say, like, stop crying in your your cold mashed potatoes or whatever. He's like, get your shit together. You did this. It happened. Move on. You have a lot to live for. Stop being such a whiny William or whatever.
A whiny William.
Classic whiny William.
So it's like,
you're being one of them.
You could
Williams.
say it's noble for taking penance, but you could also flip the coin and say, like, just get over it, man.
Flip
like,
the bean.
Move on. I mean, I don't ever want to tell someone to get
LL bean.
It's rude to. It's rude to tell someone to get over whatever they're going through. That's a rude thing to say because it takes everyone their own time. But when it comes to death, it's kind of like you need to find a way to manage this situation.
You do, yeah, that's true.
And so I'm not sure what the message the show itself was sending by doing this. Because they both presented sides, but I didn't know. And you could say, well, he was just taking the risk because it isn't a certainty. But he hopes that he'll die in that situation, So I just don't know what. I don't know
what's going to happen.
I'm not sure what the show was getting at by.
Yeah, not 100%. For me, that was more of an interesting, difficult to answer dilemma.
Yeah,
and that just because the story ended up a certain way doesn't mean it's correct. And in fact, perhaps this will continue to feed into this growing conflict between Book and Burnham in this divergence in philosophy, because Book, due to survivorship sadness, seems really to want to save each and every single person who's going to be affected by this DMA. And you kind of get the impression that Book wouldn't have cared if he'd gotten this guy off the planet. Book wouldn't have necessarily cared if, like, the daughter of the guy he killed, slashed this guy's throat open.
Yeah.
But he wanted him to be not killed by the DMA.
I guess that's what it was.
Right.
That's fair.
So we'll have to see see if this goes anywhere.
I see what you're saying about it being a dilemma, plus also it's sort of meant to sort of do stuff to Book and help with his character. I think the side effect was it was a kind of a confusing message.
I think in a more subtle way, it's also meant to demonstrate or illustrate the change in Burnham, because 2 or 3 seasons ago, I think Burnham would have straight up hit the guy on the head and dragged him out and taken him back. And now she's not doing that. She's thinking about things in a bit of a different, higher order way. She's at least recognizing that there's not an easy answer to it. Book thinks the answer is easy. She does not. Right? That's how I interpret it in any case.
So they got Doxica her Lalogi orb back. You know what they should have done? I mean, what do you think's on that orb? You think if you press the button on, like, the particular leaf, it'll give you a bio of that person? Is that they don't really explain what the Laloga
or what about
Lalogi does?
What about, like, if we get together with, like, one of your cousins and you turn on, did they, like, connect, like, to the trees?
Do they entangle with each other?
Like a Voltron?
Yeah.
Like kissing cousins?
Or just, cousins? I mean, just
what?
like
maybe you hold the balls together and it'll tell you whether or not you're far enough removed cousins to fuck each other.
Yeah,
well,
that's a good point.
that could be a good.
Are you allowed to kiss?
That could be a secondary function.
Maybe it was
the original.
Maybe it was the original primary function.
Yeah, because you know,
but that got lost to time.
Because society starts small.
But they come up with a lot of wacky stuff on. It still sort of fits in your sort of Star Trek flavor of an interesting cultural device. But now it seems like in Discovery you have aliens with different cultural things as opposed to in previous Star Treks you had funny noses and ears or Delta Quadrant gross faces.
Weird hair.
What's up with the people in the
Kazon
Delta?
hair.
Everybody's fucked up and gross in the Delta Quadrant. It's just
What were those? What was that species of people that had hair that looked like it had leaves in it?
Kazon.
There's
The
a couple of
Kazon?
those,
Was it the
yeah.
Kazon?
Kazon.
Okay, yeah. So,
a few people in the Delta Quadrant just have like weird like lettuce on their
yeah, right.
head. Like is it like a hat? Is it their hair?
Look like monstrous clowns.
I was thinking about that Lelogi orb and the concept of holding on to material possessions because on the one hand, like some people are really into hoarding a lot of stuff and other people are really into throwing away everything they get. When is it okay to obsessively hold onto a thing for a long time?
Well, now you're going to open up a whole bag of cultural anthropology.
Yeah, right. When is it okay to
in terms of which objects do humans imbue some sort of value?
and which are, well,
I mean, we imbue value in all our objects,
which is
it's
appropriate.
differing value.
like, do we hold on to a broken toothbrush for, because every item we touch, every item that's in our life has a history to it. So you could say like this broken toothbrush that I don't use anymore, and I'm not one of these people, but you could look at it and say, I remember when I got this. I remember why it broke. That's the meaning it holds to me, is it reminds me of that point of time in my life. So, but common sensibilities of where we grow up, anyways, say you should throw those things away. But on the Lelogi,
Or like my grandma keep every single National Geographic because you never know when you're going to need to look up something from an old National Geographic.
yeah, right. That's a different sort of perspective. That's a different reason. It's like when you never know when it's going to be useful perspective. That's like the different one. Of
what happens in Rhodesia?
Well,
But the Lelogi orb,
the Logi. I'm feeling a little Logi. It's been a long day. I'm feeling a little Logi.
the Logi orb is like takes that to the extreme of like I'm carrying around this fucking thing
But that to
forever
me
because
is
it holds history.
Yeah, that exactly. That is, it's the equivalent to a diary or a library or a family.
Like I said,
family religious
But
book.
that broken toothbrush may have meaning to it.
Yeah, but
Everybody's different.
Yeah, but you're asking when? Okay,
Yeah.
throw out the fucking toothbrush.
Well, I'm not asking
You're
you.
asking me.
No, I'm not
It's a
asking.
subjective thing.
I'm just.
It's got germs on it, dude.
It's got germs on it. I did it.
Coming in the new year, a new podcast. It's going to be Dan. Dan's hosting a solo podcast, and he's just going to bring items in from his home and talk about which germs are on it.
These crackers were in my basement.
How are they able? So like back when there was the plague and stuff, people got the plague.
Oh yeah.
They recognized that this plague got people sick. So how come it took them so long to accept germs? They've already got this seemingly invisible.
Well, they thought it was like the
Because of
miasma
Christianity.
theory.
because they thought the plague was due to like Christianity, like them, like God was killing them for
Okay,
some
Because
reason.
they didn't have any science.
The super short, extremely simplified, 80% incorrect version of events is that illness was often associated with spiritual
Yeah,
events,
right?
and then where it started shifting a little
Noxious
bit,
fumes.
where it shifted to the miasma theory,
Miasma, yes.
which was the bad smells theory, was when rich people started getting fucked up by the plague and other things because they're like, wait a second, we're rich people, God loves us,
Yeah.
or the ghosts love us, or whoever. So
We're
now
not covered in shit.
they needed a different mechanism. And the cool thing about just the way people develop knowledge is the miasma theory was the wrong mechanism. They developed the wrong mechanism. However, it was still helpful because it turns out that places that smell like rotting, shitty grossness are the places where there's bacteria and viruses lurking about,
And that's
right?
because your body's smart.
So by staying away, by cleaning up those places, as Dr. Jon Snow famously found, Dr. Jon Snow, he's often credited with being the first person to do sort of a scientific
you
evidence
know
review.
nothing, Jon Snow.
Apparently, this
I
guy
know.
knew something.
He was the one who figured out that certain wells in London where I think it was cholera or whatever it was causing. He was the one that figured out, if I get people to stop drinking from this well, then nobody gets sick anymore. And so
They
then
just didn't attribute it to germs and washing your hands.
until they figured out germs later because you had to invent a microscope before you could see germs. And then they
It was
saw
the germs
there's
all
a whole
along.
there's a whole bunch of funny stuff. If you want to look up, if you want to have a good time, look up what they first thought was going on.
I
when
want to
they-
have a good time.
the first people who invented microscopes or at least were using them were primarily
Nerds.
men. And immediately when men got these microscopes, they immediately started looking at their semen.
Yeah, bad.
And go look on Wikipedia or other articles. You're going to read some hilarious
They blasted it like
history
right onto the microscope.
about all the theories when dudes started looking at their own, when they started looking at their own jizz in a microscope, all sorts of theories about what was going on in there and what those little sperm were swimming around. Go read about it. Read all about it. It's quite hilarious.
Okay, so back to the point of when I was asking about when is it okay to hold on to something or not. I guess I wasn't really asking for an answer. I was just sort of,
For example, do you keep all your microscope slides with semen samples from every day? Do you keep those? Keep those in a Dexter style little.
I don't have enough room for all that.
Fair enough.
Okay, let's take a quick break.
That was
Take a
break-worthy.
quick break, and then we will wrap up the show with all our final brilliance. All right, we'll be right back. Hey, Dan.
Hey, what?
Are we back?
We're back.
We're back.
I just wanted to say that real quick that they should have put an entry for Felix in the Leilogi orb, saying this guy was fucking stole this orb and it went missing for a while.
He'd have like a big axe in his hand and he'd be chopping down the tree.
And it should say in the Leilogi orb. What are you talking about?
It's a family.
It's a family tree, and he'd be
Oh, yeah.
oh,
by the way,
and he'd be hacking
A bunch of
it.
people online were complaining that they should have been like at the top of the tree.
Oh,
right. It's
whatever.
I'm not going to worry too much.
But
about
if you can read into the entries onto the tree, like there should be a small dialogue about Felix saying that he stole the orb, it went away, because I was thinking, because Doxica, she was supposed to put her name in there a while ago, and so it could note that she put her name in late because this went missing because some guy stole it, and he ended up paying penance by dying because he felt so guilty. That's something worthwhile to remember, right?
Pirates of Penzance.
That's something worthwhile, like you'd want to remember in your family. It's like, wow, this guy like did a fucked up thing, but he really felt bad about it. We should remember him for that.
I don't know about that.
This guy stole my VCR when I was a kid. Gave it back when I was 40.
But then he killed himself due to guilt. That's humanity right there, man. In a nutshell, that's all humanity is that right there. Stealing your VCR and then committing suicide because you feel so guilty about it.
So the Akali, do you either of you recognize where we've seen the Akali before?
What's the Akali?
The Akali is that's the people who were in charge of, not all the people in the prison were Akali. Most of them were. The administrator was an Akali.
Are they part of the Emerald Chain? Because they were talking about
they were under the dominion of the Emerald Chain.
Because that's why they followed Emerald Chain rule about prisoners.
They seem to still like some of that Emerald Chain
The administrator
stuff.
guy was your classic, I'm an asshole and I don't care. The Emerald Chain's in charge. I'll do whatever they say.
Does everyone in the Emerald Chain believe in Darlin? Thank Darlin, you're Darlin.
They're all a bunch of little darlings.
Remember, he said, "Thank Darlin, you're here."
Yeah,
or whatever. Darlin. Is that an Emerald Chain god? I don't know.
The Akali.
I don't know what the hell they're talking
The
about.
Akali were a species, a pre-warp species. In fact, a fairly Middle Ages species that Captain Archer and the crew of the NX-01 Enterprise stumble across, I believe,
with Trip Tucker the Third.
With Charles Trip Tucker III. I believe it was the first species they encountered that was pre-warp. And so they had to go, there's a whole thing that they have to go down and do some stuff and do undercover. Archer, of course, ends up, I think he sleeps with the
I bet he
lady.
does.
And, but it's interesting because in the Archer's time, they were pre-warp, but now they are clearly
post-warp.
Post-warp.
Interesting.
Post-warp discovery.
But one of my favorite lines of the whole episode was that when the administrator at the end comes storming onto the bridge and is like, I demand a prisoner, blah blah blah, and Burnham is just like, hey,
so snarky,
hey dickhead, you're gonna be a refugee now.
Your shit doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I know. Right?
that was awesome. That colony
that
that was personal. That cut deep.
Because she cut him off, and she's like, oh, that one.
I'm making fun of you.
She's just like, just got knocked into the sun.
Yeah, I'm taunting your dead world.
No, you're just another refugee.
Yeah, now I hope you and I forget the exact words.
She says, I hope you find a more just society than the one you had a hand in creating.
Yes.
That was so smug and snarky, but it was kind of awesome.
Because the future's all fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was like really pointed and like direct. That was really directed and
user are a piece of shit. I was
Yeah.
just hanging out with a murderer and I was getting along better
yeah.
with
She
him.
wasn't trying to really be diplomatic at all. There, it was kind of maybe you could say it wasn't professional, but it was kind of awesome.
And even though we mostly focused on Felix and of course just brilliant acting, and so that I think that helped make it work too.
Yeah, I like that.
I did like the other people. There's a couple we don't really see because they said there's 6 life forms. We kind of see 4 of them foregrounded, and I like that one guy who are like, this guy was in for trading in counterfeit latinum, and he's just like he's like, meh.
Yeah,
He's
right.
kind of like, what are you gonna do? I totally was.
Right. Yeah.
He almost looked like I know. I mean, what a ridiculous thing to counterfeit. Latinum, they're gonna figure that shit out pretty quick. I'm an idiot.
Yeah. He would have been like the thief in the in your Final Fantasy crew or your role playing game crew. He would have been the thief.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
They've got a guy like that on Wheel of Time.
Yep, they
Yeah.
do. They do.
Yeah.
So they had this quinarium alloy, which was one of the strongest metals. Do you think it's stronger than vibranium?
I'm not going to answer that, but I'm going to.
Jesse, do you think quinarium is stronger than vibranium?
Quinarium.
I think
Quinarium?
I think it might be
Quinarium?
Quim.
not as strong as
Vibranium has some kind of radioactive powers.
Snarlorbium.
Snarlorbium. It's definitely stronger than adamantium.
I think so.
Maybe.
I found this.
Adamantium is the strongest substance in the universe.
Isn't vibranium stronger than adamantium? I don't really know.
What's vibranium?
That's the shit that they have in they have that in Wakanda.
Oh.
And that's what Captain America's shield is made of.
Oh shit.
Is adamantium a pure metal and vibranium like an alloy? I don't know.
I think it's the reverse. I think
It
adamantium
might
is
be the
an
reverse.
alloy.
And vibranium is pure?
It vibrates.
Okay, so are you going to make fun of the way I pronounce the quinarium or something? I don't know how to pronounce it.
I don't know how to pronounce it either. Some made up shit.
Okay, so what were you going to laugh at?
I just thought this.
It was a funny exchange.
It was silly. It was almost seemed extraneous. I mean, they could have been like, it was like, all right, let's try to heat it up and fry out the circuits. Okay, how long do you think it'll take? I don't know. Don't tell them. They just have this extra line. It's like, that's one of the most difficult. It's insane. There's nothing we can do. And I don't know if they were just saying like, well, if we shoot it, the audience will expect it to like explode, and we need to explain why it's not going to explode, and we need to explain why we just needed to have an extra 5 seconds of film here. For some reason. I don't know. It was just
it was a little arbitrary.
Again, though, that being said, nothing different than a million other things we've seen in Star Trek, where they're in the middle of something and just the exposition is just explaining why they're doing something a particular way. It's for the benefit of the audience.
Radvec 5.
This is another example of what we see in this show a lot, since they're in the future.
Kawat
And you have the Discovery people like, well, we're the Federation and we're here to help, and the other people are like, the Federation doesn't help people.
Right.
The Federation doesn't help people.
Yeah, right.
It's like, no, but
us.
we're here to help you right now. It's like, no.
Where were you a minute ago? Yeah. Usually it's presented in the form of like, we're not going to trust you and we're not going to get on board with you because you fuck people over. Now it's kind of the other way where it's like, where were you?
Yeah,
you know?
right.
So
you didn't help us before.
What's kind of fun is that Discovery after season 3 and continuing into season 4 is mirroring in some ways the experiences that Captain Archer and the Enterprise crew had, because Captain Archer and the Enterprise crew were pre-Federation, a bunch of Earthlings, humans that people either didn't know about, or if they heard about them, they were freaked out by these crazy fucking people who were like tooling around, going warp 5 and shit, messing fucking around with shit.
Yeah, the Vulcans held that shit from them for 50 years.
My point being is that Captain Archer, a lot of his job was talking to people and convincing them that Archer and crew were not trying to be assholes. Yeah. It's like, no, wait, we want to help you. And everyone's like, why the fuck would you want to help us? Nobody's ever trying to help us.
Because we're the Federation. Well, that's before the Federation.
Yeah, but still, it's like, that's our, we're all about that.
We're the fucking Enterprise.
And now Captain Burnham's in the exact same situation where she's going around, now she's, of course, trying to bring back the Federation's reputation by going around and doing nice things, but it's still the same basic function.
Nobody wants
having to
nice
talk to
things.
people and be like, yeah, you gotta. Don't worry, we're not gonna fuck you over. Or if we do, it won't be too much. Don't worry about it.
Everybody's got such a chip on their shoulder.
So
it's kind of like now.
So we didn't really, for real though. We didn't really discuss which is there wasn't really there was an A, B, and C plot, but we don't know which was the head plot.
I don't know.
It was all a swirly swirl.
In this case, it might be the Stamets, etc., the Tarka seemed a little bit more forefront. Hard to say
Toby
because
Tarka.
Kevin Burnham's stuff. It was a good plot, but it really was a side plot. Her and Book,
Yeah.
and it was thin. And I don't
was
mean that.
thin.
I don't mean that in a negative way. It was just
Yeah.
it is super straightforward.
The Stamets
Assholes want to let the prisoners die. Federation wants to save them. Obstacles in the way. They solve the obstacles, and there's a brief philosophical dilemma. Story over.
Yeah, the other two plots, the main one I guess you could say is about Stamets, but then there was also Culber. Both those were kind of about like balance between work and life, work and home balance. The Stamets's part was like he only cares about work, so it means he has no life. And Culber's was more like it's not that he cares only about work, it's that he's specifically avoiding life through work.
Yes.
You know, so that's kind of like the theme.
I think that's a well observed difference. So they share some stuff in common, but they are coming at it from different angles.
But yeah, you're right that I couldn't really place what exactly there doesn't need to be some kind of overarching point. But like I think you summarized it pretty good with the one with Burnham and on the planet. It was fun. It was neat. It presented some dilemmas and some ideas.
And sets up a foundation for a future conflict between Burnham and Book.
I concur.
Which we'll see if that's fulfilled or not. That seems to be the direction.
I like those saw blade things that the robot,
those are
robot
awesome.
beetles would shoot out.
That reminded me
even though they were also totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They like I like how they hit the rock and they were slowly like making their way through the rock. And it's
was
like,
it gonna like explode the rock or something?
Yeah, it reminded me of a video game almost. Like that's their alternate fire button. Like
This was a video game level.
Yeah, because like there's like the gun that has the main primary fire, but your alternate fire is to throw this saw blade
like
that
a
can melt
special
through.
thing,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
All the obstacles they faced to rescue the prisoners were video game.
Yeah.
Totally,
There's like
yeah.
a special barrier. It's like in a James Bond, like in GoldenEye or something, where it's like you have to remove this person from the building before you can rescue them.
You have to catch the attention of the beetles so they can blow up and blow down the door.
I did like the solution. I predicted it in my brain using my brain meat.
your brain meat.
My brain meat. But it was well executed, and I thought it was fun. And even though I didn't like the dialogue that was accompanied, the only thing I didn't like when they were walking around was like, oh.
But yeah, I like that Felix guy. He was pretty cool.
Yeah, Felix.
Cooler than Neelix.
That guy was cool.
I don't know how to pronounce. I was looking up his name. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Michael, and then it's Greyeyes.
Grey. Gray.
Eio.
It's like gray eyes, except it's one word.
Maybe it's Gray Eyes.
Maybe it's gray eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, Michael
I don't know.
Gray Eyes.
He
Yeah.
seems to be perhaps a native.
I think he's Canadian, but like
Canadian, First Nations type.
But
Yeah, I think that's-
brilliant acting.
maybe it is just gray eyes. I just didn't expect it to be one word. That was throwing me off.
And Deep Space Nine style, we're seeing our characters
From Saskatchewan.
encounter new people along the
That's
way,
Canada for real.
and have little moral adventures, tales with them, and then move along, and they'll remember them, even if we don't see the person again.
He's from the Muskeg Lake Cree Nation.
Excellent.
Egg salad.
I was about to say, I hope we see him again, but we
won't.
presumably
Yeah.
will not.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll use him for different characters.
So-
Classic Star Trek fashion.
Any other major points?
No other major points.
I don't
for
have any
me.
major points.
I don't have any
Did
other
you like?
major
Did you like the
points.
Cronenberg scene? I like Cronenberg's matter of factness.
I like every scene that guy's in. That
Yeah, I
guy's
mean, I
great.
gave a whole thing about death based on it. Yeah.
He didn't come up very much in that conversation. I just wanted to comment on his the bluntness is great. It's
just his character.
It's still exposition, but it's well constructed exposition, and he just he's turned into this character. He's willing to tell people like the deal. I go back and forth a little bit. In some scenes, I think the acting is better than in other scenes, and I think some of that might be depends how special effecty is. Like when he was talking to Tilly in the Starfleet Academy, at one point I thought it worked very well. At the other point, it seemed, and this is quite probably true because of COVID and other things, it seemed like he was just recording his lines to nobody, and it was a little disjointed.
But yeah, it was a perfect end to the conversation. He's like, I have another meeting
so
right
a
now.
busy
At 2
motherfucker.
o'clock.
He's like, I'll see. He didn't even say I'll see you. He's like, I got another meeting. Zoop. And it's like, but yeah.
And he didn't say 1400. He's all about the
Oh yeah.
all about the 2 o'clock. Oh. All right. Odds and ends.
I bet you 1,000,000 bars of gold-pressed latinum that Zora gets her own robot body one day.
That's right. We totally didn't talk about
Yeah.
Zora. Now, have you seen the short treks? The specific short trek that deals with Zora.
I've seen all the short treks. There haven't been any new ones, right?
No.
I have seen them all, but I'll have to watch it again because I forget a lot of it.
Calypso is the name of the short trek where we are first introduced to Zora way before, this is back in season 2 of Discovery, right? So just to avoid any spoilers for people who haven't seen it, and it's not even really spoilers because if you see it, you'll understand.
Well, spoilers in the eye of the beholder.
So the
Some people don't like to know anything.
The spoilee.
Yeah. So that is why I'm not going to delve into it, even though I think you could describe the entire plot of Calypso and still not having to have a clear idea. But there's definitely some information that's presented there
You should watch it. Check it
because Zora is involved there. But it is important to mention that we see Burnham having that conversation with Zora. Right? Like they've already gotten used to the idea that the computer decided to call itself Zora. Okay. Now Burnham is talking to Zora and Zora is talking about emotions and how you're feeling and all this stuff. And Burnham seems a little bit, like perplexed or whatever. But she also is like, there's a moment where she's like, the fuck are we dealing with here?
Yeah,
'Cause she already dealt
exactly.
with that whole control AI bullshit,
Yeah.
and now there's like her fucking Starfleet computers talking to her she got the sphere data
You
in
seem
there.
like you're a little upset today, Captain Burnham.
And I really like this character of the computer character of Zora, and I'm so looking forward to see where they go with this. One theory that's been floated around out there by a few people is they keep bringing up this issue of the pilots for the Spore Drive. You've got Stamets and you've got Book now who's figured out how to fly the Spore Drive. Basically nobody else. Maybe Zora learns how to drive the Spore Drive.
Then she'll be Zora the Explorer.
I respect that. I do.
I respect that a lie.
I would like to be angry about that, but that's a good one.
That's a good one.
That's a good
That's
one.
a good one.
Zora the Snorer.
Oh
Zora the
shit.
Snorer.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So that's gonna be interesting to see where they go with that.
If she does get a robot body like I'm predicting, do you think it'll be all chrome and robot-y, or do you think it'll just look like human like Gray's body?
I think she's gonna stay in the ship. Who knows? Maybe she creates the DMA by.
But that wasn't one of the options I presented.
Okay,
If
all right.
they make her a body,
Well,
what do you think that body? Do you think that body will be robot-y and chrome, or do you think
Robot-y.
do you think it'll be all human like?
I think it'll be nobody.
I think it'll
Nobody.
look like the maid in the Jetsons.
I hope so.
You're just being silly. You're just being silly.
I think it'll look like Mr. Roboto
You're
from the Styx song, Mr. Roboto.
You're indirectly telling me that that's a ridiculous question to postulate
I'm not saying any such thing.
or postulate upon, I guess.
Postulate
Postulate a
upon.
question.
You know it won't look like from the Jetsons.
So what do you think it's going to look like then?
I was just
What do you got
wondering.
against the Jetsons?
I was just wondering if it'll be humanoid either way, but do you think I was wondering if it'll look all like human-y or if it'll look all chrome and reflective-y, like a T-1000 or something. I don't know.
Like a T-1000 or like a protocol droid? Is that what you're saying? You think she's gonna
Something like that.
look like a protocol droid?
C-3PO guy.
C-3PO style?
Yeah, but more human-like. It's just the only difference is she's reflective and
Okay,
chrome.
you're the one asking the question, but you clearly have something envisioned. Why don't you simply describe
Chrome
it to
and
us?
It's like chrome and shiny, and the hair,
Shiny and chrome.
Shiny
and
chrome.
the hair.
I'll die and live again.
Mad Max, Fury.
I forgot. Sorry.
Who runs Barter Town?
And her
Master Blaster.
and her hair will kind of look like Dot Matrix from Spaceballs, and that it'll
And Dot
be...
Matrix looks like C-3PO, like a protocol.
No. Just the hair, though. Just the hair will look... It'll be all metallic and weird. But then her
But-
body will look like a normal sort of...
like a Japanese flesh robot.
Is this one of those?
I don't know about that.
Look up Japanese flesh robot.
No.
On Google.
No.
Do it right now.
What's it called?
I'm not
Rule
looking it up
30.
on my-
Rule 34.
I don't think you need the Rule 34 for that. I think just Japanese flesh robot, you can purchase them.
I'm just thinking it'll look like a human with a chrome reflective body.
This is where you get into.
But you mean
Rule
with
34.
flesh, right? You mean with flesh?
No, it's a chrome reflective body.
So but then how does that look like a human?
Not a flat. Now I see. I know what you're talking about. Not like a flesh body. She looks metallic.
Look at the Japanese sex robot.
He saw it and he shut his phone down. I saw it.
He's like, that's not what I'm talking about.
I'm talking about. She just looks like a humanoid with humanoid parts, but she's metallic and like.
Yeah, you're describing C-3PO.
No, but not all like stiff like C-3PO. Smooth.
So live.
Lithe, yeah.
Lithe.
But her hair won't be stringy.
Supple.
Her hair will be very like solid and metallic and just kind of a lump of thing, like
Solid,
like a permed
like,
hair, like if you permed your hair.
Like Jim.
Like Gem and the
No, like if you
Holograms?
permed your hair and made it a solid thing, like Dot Matrix from Space. This isn't worth arguing about.
I'm just
anymore.
curious where you're getting this imagery from.
I think I'm getting it from Mass Effect.
Oh, okay. I haven't played Mass Effect, so I'm not super familiar with that.
Is that about Massachusetts?
It is, yeah.
I wish.
It's the massive.
I wish.
You ever heard that Elvis song? Elvis have a song about Massachusetts. It's pretty great.
Right.
Elvis?
Elvis.
It's
Yeah.
like they
Why-
they don't
the
really know
Norwegian
about
band.
Massachusetts.
Oh.
They just like the name
Yeah.
Massachusetts.
They did the What Does the Fox Say?
Oh,
Which is a
yeah.
great song, but is one of their lesser songs. Their whole catalog is brilliant. And the Massachusetts song is pretty darn good. It's not as good as the one about the old men who go kill some horses, but
Oh yeah,
Elvis.
those guys are out there. Man.
I have about 2 more. Does anyone else have any odds and ends?
No, I have none.
I mean, I did, but you
I
made
already
me draw a
s-
blank. You
I already
squished
s-
them.
I
and
spent them.
Pushed them out of my head.
I'm
man.
I
sorry.
spent my odds
No,
and I
it's
spent
quite all
my
right.
ends.
When the there was one part after they talked to Zora where there was on I think it was Zora that was saying this, I'm assuming, or maybe it was just one of the crew members, I can't remember, but it was saying like, attention, duty logs have been updated to reflect new rotations
Yeah,
effective
I
immediately.
really like that part.
Yeah, I laughed because it's the duty logs.
Oh, I like you and I liked it for different reasons. I just like the Star Trek style ambiance, which is
Yeah.
something that we got a lot in Star Trek 2, Star Trek 3, Star Trek 6,
Yeah.
etc. You know,
No,
where
I
they're
like that too.
walking around star bases and stuff.
I like that too, but then I thought about duty logs
Yeah,
and I started.
that's funny because it's both duty, which is like feces, and logs, which is like a log of feces.
Like a whole logo.
Like it's a duty log.
Precisely.
Yeah, I mean, people come here for this sort of sophisticated analysis, but
I was thinking that when what's his name, Felix, when Felix was telling
it's funny that his name is Felix somehow.
yeah, I know it is kind of weird.
It's too much like Neelix.
Right. When Burnham was like, what's the name of, this person? He's like, Doxica. They should have given that. You'd think he would have given that information right when he handed over the thing, but whatever, dramatic effect, whatever. Because literally, if he had said it a second later, they wouldn't have known. I'm sure they could have found out some other way, but still, it's like,
No.
why did they wait till the last second to ask?
That girl was on the colony.
Yeah, she was on the colony.
Okay, that's
'Cause
why like
he-
Burnham just found her like right
Well,
away.
he killed the guy there,
right.
so the girl grew up on the same colony. It looked like the kind of colony that is not easy to get away from.
And
Totally.
And and I think this happened in Shawshank Redemption, but like whenever someone gives the name of something and they don't write it down, I'm worried they'll forget it. So I was like, what if she forgets the name of
So Watanea?
Yeah, exactly. So what if she forgot Doxica? And then I was thinking, well, they would have lost because in the future everything gets recorded. And then I started thinking about how back in the 90s when the internet was starting to become a thing, people used the internet as this sort of refuge of sort of like a place to go to have private conversations, so you're not always having someone tell you what to do.
ASL.
Yeah,
ASL. Age, sex, location.
Right, basically a place to be you could feel free and have like those kinds of situations. That was one of the draws of the internet, is you didn't have people like your teachers being like, don't do that. It's like, I can go here and no one will judge me.
Yeah,
and
you
that
could
kind
be
of stuff.
12 years old, go on the internet and find some guy who would tell you to whatever it is you want to do. He'd say, go right ahead and do it.
Yeah,
Go right ahead and do it, Dan.
I mean, there's definitely some dangerous aspects of that. I'm not promoting those.
why don't you come over to my house? I'll buy you a plane ticket.
Look, I'm not saying that it was good or bad. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but that was one of the
but
things.
it was freedom.
But it was one of the things. God damn it! Do not place any judgment on me because I'm not saying it's good or
I'm
bad.
not judging.
This is more.
We're a pro-freedom podcast.
No, I'm saying that was one of the places people went to do that kind of stuff, sketchy or not, right? But when you think about it, that's like the worst place. In retrospect, that's the worst place to do stuff like that. Because thinking about, just as they could have recorded Doxica to hear later, like their refuge was a place where everything can be monitored, ultimately. So the internet is more monitorable than day-to-day life now, And back then it was like less monitorable, but now it's like it was silly for us to think that the internet could be used as a place of freedom and anonymity.
That's why we got to go back to the old BBS days, bulletin board systems. That's where true privacy was. Analog over a modulator, demodulator, 2400 baud.
Somehow we expected a medium that doesn't degrade, as opposed to like, records or films. We somehow expected that would allow us to escape from surveillance. It's like we fled from a sword and took solace in a pit of spikes.
You wrote that down ahead of time.
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. Well, it was good then. It sounded like you did.
That's pretty good.
That means it's really good. If it sounds like you wrote it down ahead of time and that was actually extemporaneous.
We thought we could say things in secret in a medium that is terrible at keeping secrets.
a nest of vipers.
Okay, so part of what's leading me to think you wrote this down ahead of time is because you're reading from your phone.
I'm reading my notes. They're my notes.
I know, so you wrote it down.
Your notes are over here.
My eyes are up here. What's your point?
One odd
Wait,
and end.
well, you can read from notes without reading verbatim. It could have just said surveillance internet, and I could have just come up with that all on the fly.
You could have.
Why are you trying to call me out in front of the audience?
I'm not trying to call you out in front of anybody.
Yeah, you did. You said you read that.
I think you're Kaiser Sose.
You said you read that.
Yeah, you're like reading behind on the wall behind Jesse.
Lamp. My name is Lamp Woodboard.
My name's Pile of Books. Yeah, I wanted to mention the whole thing with it's Reese, right?
It's Reese.
Commander Reese. On the one hand, I liked the idea of having him wanting to volunteer for this evacuation mission, to lead this evacuation mission, because he has a personal involvement in it, because in good, just not only Star Trek style, just good classic style, it's a way to introduce an aspect of his personality that we didn't know before.
Yeah.
The other bridge crew, it's always difficult to do it. The only problem I had was they did it in this complicated backwards order. What he should have explained when he volunteered for it, just from a dramatic perspective, when he volunteered for it, he should have said, "Captain, can I volunteer for this? You might not recall, but my family, the whole city was destroyed by a hurricane, and the Starfleet officers helped me, so I have some perspective. I think I can help these people." And then Captain Burnham says, "That's perfect. That's great. You go do that."
And beyond just a dramatic having it be a dramatic way of presenting it, it actually would make more sense, because it would, instead of just being like, "I want to do it," she's like, "Why should I let you do it?"
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. It would make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
To me, I don't know. It just that there was something bizarre about the narrative.
Unless
flow
they
of that.
decided to go the route of, "Well, you're too close to this, so you won't be." You know how they do that sometimes? They say, "You're too close to this, so you don't have an objective perspective." I don't know. But I don't think they would have gone. I think he has a. Yeah, you're right.
He probably didn't grow up on Earth, because on Earth you can like control the weather and stuff.
And then when he's talking to them, I mean, they had a good reason to talk to him at the time. It made sense that Burnham would, be touching base with him in particular, seeing how the evacuation is going right before
instead of touching book,
right before she walks into the non-communication zone part of the video game. That
was definitely it from a video game. We're going to the dark zone for a while. That's the part of the video game where if you die in there, you lose all your items and weapons and stuff.
Yeah.
If you die in the dark land, you lose all the gold you made and everything. But if you die outside of the dark land, you get to keep all.
Were I to have rewritten this episode or edited this episode, I would have moved the revelation that he had experience being evacuated from a catastrophic event by Starfleet. I would have moved that to when he volunteered. But then in this section, I would have had it be, he's communicating holographically with Burnham. She's asking him for an update, and him giving the update saying like everything's going well. There's some concerned people, but I've got I'm getting through to them because I've been through a similar situation. Some dialogue to convey that because I'm because of my experience that I've referenced previously, that's helping the process go smoothly. So don't worry about it. The audience doesn't need to worry about that entire storyline. They can just assume the evacuation is going to go well, and let us focus here. Cause that's fundamentally what they were doing was we have Burnham and Book evacuating these 6 people that they have to, deal with these obstacles to get to. So that's what we're watching. In order to not distract us from that story, they have to state outright on multiple occasions that just make it clear to the audience, don't worry about the actual massive evacuation of the many thousands of other people.
That's going to go smoothly.
That's going fine. Because if the audience is thinking about that, even subconsciously, it's going to draw your attention away a little bit.
Because that's a big fucking deal.
And it is also going to alter how you subjectively interpret the actions of Burnham and the prisoners, etc. Because if you're thinking about it in the context of, why is Burnham wasting her time with these assholes? They're being assholes. She could be off helping with these other people. But if we are confident, which I do think they accomplish getting this message across that we are confident that we don't even have to worry about that whole fucking evacuation. Saru's making sure the transporters have plenty of power. Reese is making sure that it's getting out based on his experience. Now, they conveyed all that. I think they conveyed it slightly awkwardly, but successfully.
They said there were 1,206 people to evacuate. Do you think that includes the 6 that were the examples? Seems like an exact number of people.
No, they weren't. Well,
They said there's 1,206 people they had to evacuate.
Yeah, I hadn't noticed that. There's a little bit on the nose.
So
Because I think it is including those 6 people.
So that means that they had to take 40 because the beam can hold the array. The ray can beam 40 at a time. So that's like 30 trips. That's 30 trips that it takes.
30 Charles Strip Tucker the Thirds?
Yep. You were talking.
That would be so fun.
That would be fun.
That would be super fun.
That would be like 76 trombones, except better.
Yeah.
yeah.
You were talking earlier about moving Revelations. What do you got?
Right. To like a different part of the Bible?
Yeah, you were just trying to take Revelations and move it to a different
Yeah, I would move that. I would move Revelations more in the middle.
I would say more. You
Just
should
to throw things up, kind of like Pulp Fiction, put the end in the middle.
Yeah, I would think Revelations would be best as the very first thing in the Bible to catch your attention because Lord knows that Genesis shit is not interesting.
The Genesis stuff starts out strong, gets boring real quick.
It's just all about begat this, begat that. And
Tell me everything about Genesis.
Genesis does. You can't do this on Nintendo. Genesis does. Genesis does. Genesis does.
Sega.
Yeah, or Star Trek 2, either, whichever you prefer.
You mean from the Kelvin universe?
You know what's a funny one is Leviticus is funny. 'Cause
Leviticus is
it tells
great.
you can't eat eagles and don't eat
Shrimp.
eagles and shrimp.
They were onto something though, because we're still not supposed to be eating eagles in America.
Carnivores.
What the hell are you talking
Carnivores.
We're not supposed to bald eagles. You can't hunt bald eagles in America.
In America, you can't be hunting.
It's the
can't be
it's a
doing that
national
in
bird.
America.
You
baby.
might as well be shooting down America
Might as well
itself.
shoot down America.
Might as well
I think
be-
somebody beat us to that
Might
one.
as well blow your. Yeah. Oh
I think
shit.
we're just doing that to ourselves.
Yeah.
Any other odds and ends? Otherwise, I think that.
I think it was a great podcast. I think we really
Really nailed that one.
Yeah, it was an excellent podcast, as
knocked
always.
knocked it right out.
As always.
Joss Sepp. That-
Joe Lantrue.
You're talking about Joss Sepp.
Joss Sepp?
That was like something about Stamets' research on the Joss Sepp, which is something to do with the
Oh, those are the
mycelial network.
Yeah, those are the people those are the creatures that live in the mycelial network.
I need to rewatch that whole
dude.
section.
Yeah,
because that
that's-
was fucking far out.
Yeah, that's
man.
the one that was messing with Tilly because they were explaining that every time you travel, you're fucking us up. But then they sort of went away from that, and I think sort of retroactively are like, okay, they figured out a way not to bother those people. So, all right, I think that should do it. Then we've finished up all our odds and ends. As Jesse noted, this was an excellent episode of the podcast. Pretty good episode of
As
the Star Trek
always.
Discovery as well. Next week we will be discussing episode 6.
The next episode.
Of season 4 of Star Trek Discovery. I presume we don't know the episode yet because we've run out of the pre-published episode titles. Now we're waiting
Maybe there'll be a Klingon.
days on it. Yeah, that'd be awesome if the season finale is like it's all fucking Klingons. It's
Just
nothing but
Klingons.
fucking Klingons all over the place. That'd be
We
great.
got Clem Fandango.
But in the meantime, we hope you have a lovely one. Tune in next week, and we will, because we'll be here next week, right? You guys want to be here next week?
Yes.
Keep doing this for a little while.
We will be
it's
here.
Xmas Eve next week.
Yeah, but we can still.
Oh.
We'll still figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah,
We can still do it.
Yeah, we can still do it. I don't have any.
It's not like we're,
I think we can go above and beyond
Kids
and
or something.
provide a Christmas treat.
Kids or something.
Provide a Christmas treat for our friends out there in the audience. And,
Yeah.
and they can open up the presents, and then in the afternoon they
That's
can
right.
open up a fresh episode of the It's Got Star Trek podcast.
I think
me
that's
so
a
warm.
Fresh and steamy.
I just wanna curl up with a warm cup of cocoa in front of fire. Listen to a podcast with a good book
some eggnog.
And so it ends.
and some eggnog with mad amount of eggnog in it.
It ends
Just
similar
some plain-
similar to how it began, with Dan doing a funny voice.
Funny voice. I'm doing a funny voice right now. This is me doing a funny voice. This is yours.
This was a great
All right,
podcast,
so
everybody.
that's enough for us
That's-
this week.
that's way fucking
Social
too much.
media.
Hey, Jesse.
At It's
Hey,
Got Star
Jesse.
Trek.
Hey, what?
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube.
Did you ever watch us on YouTube, Jesse?
www.itsgotstartrek.com and feedback at itsgotstartrek.com. to send your old-fashioned emails. Send those along.
You can look at us by seeing it's got Star Trek. You can see us on Twitter and Instagram doing that. Hey Jesse, did you know that?
Yes, I did.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Is that safe?
Let's see, if 1 is nothing to worry about, and 10 is insane, I would say it's probably a 6.
Great science was never accomplished with caution.
I'm not sure that's actually true.